While the host of Sisters in Arms have taken every precaution to ensure that the content of this program is both current and accurate, errors can occur. The host assumed no responsibility or liability for any errors or omission in the content of this program.
The information contained in this program is provided on an as-is basis with no guarantee of completeness or accuracy. The opinions of the guests are not necessarily the same as the hosts.
Welcome to Sisters in Arms. I'm Kerrie and Auclair.
And I'm Renee Gagne. Together we serve as a Second Amendment resource for our communities.
Today we have a special guest, John Pajak, and we're going to be discussing the importance of hunting and how crucial it is to our environment. So, I know you have a long bio that you will not read for yourself, and this is pretty impressive.
I won't,
So you had 44 years of active policing.
Yes.
And most of it was firearm instructing, including 28 years as an environmental police officer?
Yes.
That's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
I'm a conservation clerk for my local town, so I find that interesting. And let's see, retired with rank of lieutenant, is that
From
correct?
the environmental police, that was
Yep.
my permanent rank.
For about 2 years, you said?
Oh, I've been retired for 10 years now.
And a major overseeing all operations. That's pretty
I
impressive.
did that for about 2 years.
But
Yeah.
wait, there's more.
There's more.
36 years in uniform, U.S. Army, Army National Guard, and Army Reserve, ranks of private to colonel, basic branch infantry officer, qualified transportation, logistics, and military police, trained anti-terrorism specialist, as well as nuclear, bio, and chemical warfare and agro-terrorism.
I didn't sleep much.
Oh wait, there's
There's
more.
more.
Hunter education
Enough.
instructor, college professor, conservation law enforcement, distinguished pistol shooter, recognized expert witness in the mass courts on subjects of firearms and edged weapons. That I found very impressive.
Yeah, and you were part of the Eagle Scouts too in 1977.
I was.
That's awesome. So how you were there? How long did you do that? For a little bit, or?
Well, I went through the scouting program. I started at 8 years old in Cub Scouts, 10 years old into the Webelos, 11 into the Boy Scouts, and I finished off my Eagle Project just before I turned 18.
And what was that? I want to know. Do you remember?
My Eagle Project, I
Yeah.
can tell you exactly what it was.
Okay.
In the town that I grew up in, they needed to have a needs assessment done of all of the senior citizens, because that was the days when they were just establishing councils on aging. So that was thrown out there for me to pursue, and I actually used not only the other scouts, but the Key Club in the high school, which was sponsored by Kiwanis International, of which I was a member, to do a survey that we put together, and we literally contacted everyone that the town had a record of the age of 55 and over, and asked them, what did they need? Do you need transportation? Do you need a meals program? Do you need rides to the hospital? Do you need a place to gather, to do Social Security, fuel assistance, you name it. So that was right after, my God, the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs was just formed in state government.
Wow.
And they were starting the senior programs. And like in many towns, it was an old mill town. Most of the older folks that lived in town had worked in the mills. The mills closed, and that's it, folks.
Mm-hmm.
You got your Social Security and whatever you managed to stash away in your savings over the years. So it was quite a project. And I finished the Eagle up. I graduated. I went in the Army for a while. I came home, and I got waylaid into being on the Council on Aging, which they had just formed. So,
That was you went full circle.
oh
there.
my God! I'm
Yeah, no kidding.
It's like the hair club for men. I'm not advertising, and I'm also a client. But I'm getting there. So a couple of years after that, I ended up on the local police department, and we had a unique situation on the Council on Aging. The captain of the fire department was a Vietnam vet in the Marine Corps, and myself were the chair and the vice chair of the Council on Aging.
Nice.
So. And people would tell me, well, you don't understand such and such about the elder needs. You don't understand such and such about the Council on Aging. I look at them and I go, I did the survey.
Right.
Funny.
It was cool. We
Now,
had a good
with
time.
the Scouts, do they teach the Scouts about hunting?
They teach the Scouts a lot about environmental science, hunting, firearm safety. It's kind of all
Right.
in the big picture.
And so we are talking about hunting and how important it is to the environment, and I don't think people really quite understand that term. Can you kind of go into?
I can. With the population that we have and, you know, the fragmented ownership of land, all the resources need to be managed to some degree. Okay, there is a carrying capacity for any species that you can name that's indigenous to the area. And when you exceed that carrying capacity, it does a couple of things. It depletes the habitat, it causes the animals to not fully develop, and it makes them very vulnerable to situations with the weather, like, for example, a harsh winter.
Right.
Okay, we also saw back in the 90s when they introduced hunting into the Quabbin Reservation for the first time in roughly 50 years that some of the deer taken were stunted because the browse line, deer browse, okay, that's the term that they use for eating. The browse line was about 6 feet off the ground. And there were so many deer per mile, there was absolutely no forest regeneration.
Oh.
So what that does, that affects water quality, it affects the habitat, it affects other species that live there too, that live in the substory of the forests. Well, they were lucky, the timing was good by the time they got through all the court challenges and everything that they had to hunt. And I think there was roughly 700 deer taken. It was not a pretty sight for somebody that was there and witnessed it, but it was necessary. And we got hit with a couple of hard winters right afterwards. And the biologist assessments would have been that it would have wiped out the deer herd completely.
Oh my gosh.
They would have starved to death.
Yeah, and
And-
you don't think of those things. You don't even think
Exactly.
how important it is to hunt.
So every species in this state is managed, whether it's a game species, a non-game species, or an endangered species, as is all of the habitat that's owned by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And it's kind of a revolving cycle. And most of the funding for that actually comes from the people that a lot of folks don't like, the hunters. Before the turn of the 20th century, we were already protecting our wildlife in Massachusetts. Our marine fisheries resources as well as our wildlife resources. And they needed to fund that. So they had a Fish and Game Commission. Everything was depleted. In fact, Massachusetts was mostly denuded. It was all wide open except for a couple of places in the Berkshires. So you couldn't take anything unless you paid a fee to the Commonwealth. And it's a privilege license because all of the resources belong to all the citizens of the Commonwealth. But they funded the game commissioners. And then as things evolved, we get into just before the beginning of World War I, hunting became more popular, very highly regulated sport. And the animals started to come back. There was no more market shooting. Market hunting is when they used to just devastate flocks of wildlife and or deer in particular, and it was for the commercial market. Commercialization was out. It started before 1900. They had to do it because
Didn't they have problems with the turkey too?
everything.
Yeah.
Everything. The turkey restoration in this state, and this is one for your folks in southeastern Mass, I'm sure a lot of people absolutely hate the fact that the turkeys are in their gardens and all over the place and sometimes peck in their yards. The first turkeys that were released in Massachusetts were released in Middleborough at Rocky Gutter.
Oh, really?
20 minutes from us, right?
Rocky Gutter in 1986. They were caught out in Hancock, Mass by Jim Cardoza from Mass Wildlife. And I was one of the new officers in the environmental police that worked down here. I got a call from Commissioner Bickford, and it was, meet me at
No.
McDonald's in Middleborough.
That's never good.
And it sounded to me, you know, as the blood pressure went up, that I was going to get fired.
Oh.
And Walter says, no, you're the district officer. This is what we're going to do. So I still have the picture from the cover of the Middleborough Gazette of Commissioner Bickford, myself, Jim Cardoza, and I think it was Wayne McCallum from Fish and Wildlife releasing those first birds down here. And they were monitored for a couple of years, and the flock grew from there as they were supplemented with more birds that were brought in. But that was paid for entirely by the hunters. And turkey hunting in Massachusetts now is a big-time sport. There's a lot of people involved in it, a lot of money involved in it, and it gets people out in the woods in the springtime to shake off the winter cobwebs.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We have 6 pictures, 5 or 6 pictures, that we're just going to throw up on the screen here, and you're going to tell us what's going on. We're going to play a game.
Oh yeah, just
What's
randomly
happening in this picture?
That would have been the Gold Fashion Show with Mike Harris and I.
Very nice. We were there.
I know you were.
Oh yeah, that was a fun
Cocktailing.
day. That was a fun day.
That was some amazing public outreach there, teaching people how to conceal carry and different options so they can carry safely.
Yep.
Absolutely. It was a good night.
Oh, this is interesting. Okay.
Wow.
Please tell.
That's a blast from the past. That actually ended up on the abstracts for Mass Wildlife for the trapper education program, or the trapping program. And it was in the Fish and Wildlife abstracts too. That was me as a, I don't know, maybe 30-year-old environmental police officer checking a trapper in the field.
Was he in trouble? Was he doing
He was
something wrong?
not in trouble. He
Oh,
did
good.
everything absolutely correct.
He looks nervous.
No. And he was actually a grad student at UMass that was working on fur bearer management at the
Okay.
time.
Oh wow.
All right.
All right.
And yeah, we put that together, and that is a conibear trap in my
Nice.
hand, and in my right hand I have the chain, and I'm checking his tag. His traps had to be tagged.
All right. Let's see what else we got. Oh,
Wow. East Deerfield National Park Service Conservation Law Enforcement Program, and I'm looking at, boy, that's back in the revolver days. So back in the 80s, the National Park Service brought a program to UMass, and it was to train basically college students and people within that age range of college or grad students to work as seasonal park rangers for the National Park Service.
oh, I love it.
So I was asked by the professor that was involved in integrating that program into the university if I could assist with the firearms program, and I had the certifications, and they needed someone who had gone through a federally recognized program, and I had been through the FBI's instructor school a couple of times. And then they looked into the resume and some of the other stuff I did, so I did the firearms. That was a 40-hour course, and most of these people never shot anything. We had a week to have them fully qualified to national park standards on a handgun, a 12-gauge shotgun, Remington 870, and an AR-15. And then we also gave them a class on full auto firearms so that they were familiar with it. Chemical munitions. They also roped me into doing the search, rescue, and recovery portion of this to teach search management.
That's awesome.
Massachusetts had one of the first protocols that was established long before anybody else did, that we actually put together a game plan as what do you do if somebody's lost in the woods. So I was with them for 22 years until the program finally, it outpaced what the Park Service outpaced what the program could provide for them. And the university, at a reasonable cost, could not provide that program anymore.
Do they
for
also
friends.
go in the water, rivers type?
Oh yeah, they did. In
Searching,
fact,
yeah.
they did a life-saving program in the pools. They did a boat handling program on the Connecticut
That's
River, supported by the environmental police, taught them a boating safety course. And one of the things that we found after probably I'd say the second iteration of that course, and the fellow that ran it and coordinated it was a retired special agent in charge of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. He's a published author. He had been a game warden in Wisconsin. And he said, my God, people are coming up and they're going to be working in these resource areas. They don't know anything about hunting.
No.
And they're going to be dealing with hunters. How are we going to fix that?
Good point.
And I said, hunter education program.
There you go.
So they left there with a complete hunter education program under their belts as well. And I brought in some really cool people from the local area to teach it.
That's awesome.
So you're the guru of all
I'm
of this.
just going to say that. You've done a lot of really important things that,
Thank you. I spent a lot of time with it, and it's a passion. And the whole environmental police thing, yeah, it's a job. Okay, it's also a lifestyle. And my background, whether it's from Boy Scouts, and making it to the rank of Eagle, graduating from high school, my senior destination vacation was to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And my follow-up, I was about 10 days out of high school, and my follow-up from there was Fort Benning, Georgia. I came home wearing a blue cord as a for-real infantryman. And I did a lot of that. A couple of years later, I was back at Benning at an instructor course to teach anti-armor weapons. A couple of years after that, they picked me for officer candidate school. And I had to take a hiatus from the police department, but I came back as a fully qualified infantry officer. So maps and compass, living in the field, survival, communications, firearms, obviously.
Yeah.
little leadership and everything. It all started with Boy Scouts, and it just went right through. So when
Yeah.
I became an EPO, we're working in the woods all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
I was in my habitat. I was in my groove every time we went out there.
And you got paid for that?
And I get paid for it.
That's so much
I,
fun.
I, I still remember pulling into
my
the
glory.
driveway one day. My mom, quick side story, my mom used to tell me I had an International Scout as my first vehicle. I used to go up to the club with my friends, with our 22s, and we'd shoot. We shot in a youth league and everything. And I had a dirt bike. My mom would say, "You need to stop doing that, blah, blah, blah. You're never going to get a job," on and on and on. I pulled in the yard one day, driving a brand new SUV, fully equipped, with a trailer on the back of it, with a dirt bike and a snowmobile issued to me by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I
Those
walked in the
fringe
house and, "What's
benefits."
for lunch?" My father was smiling from ear to ear.
That's awesome.
Now, we talk about the kids, and the kids are near and dear to my heart because they're our next generation,
They
right,
are.
of hunters and shooters. And it's so important to train them, and it's so fantastic that Massachusetts has all of these programs for the youth. So Massachusetts Conservation Camp. I know
Awesome
you know
place.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome
so
place.
I know Mansfield Fish and Game, where we are affiliated with at the range. They
have a juniors program.
Yeah, they have a juniors program, but they also pay for a couple kids every year to go to that camp.
I would say probably half the kids that go to that camp are sponsored somehow, one way or another, by one of the Fish and Game clubs.
Yep.
Worcester County League of Sportsmen has done it for years. I've been very friendly with that organization. My own club, Essex Sportsman's Club, it has a youth rifle program, which has been around for 18 or 20 years already. In fact, they sent a young lady to the Olympics, and she did well, and she's presently at the Mass State Police Academy as a trooper candidate.
That's awesome.
Nice, nice.
That's awesome. And
We have the the mayor of Taunton. Her daughter was a junior shooter, and she's now a cadet at
yeah,
West
she
Point.
got scholarship.
Yeah,
to
and
get
she
to-
was
yeah.
in the Junior Olympics
Right.
as well.
And we got about a little over 10 minutes. We should probably talk about what could potentially happen.
Oh, okay. So we're talking about how fantastic it is for these juniors. We know that there is a bill that presented itself in the end of June, 4420.
HD 4420.
And I'm pretty sure part of that bill talks about kiboshing all shooting sports for kids under 15. Can you speak on that
It
at all?
does. Excuse me. It does, and it's troubling to see that because, as you mentioned, conservation camp, the youth programs. I talked to the shooting sports director for the Boy Scouts for one of the major camps in the Northeast,
Yep.
in another state, but he's worked in Massachusetts as an instructor. And he went through this. He has a law enforcement background, firearms background. He said, that's it. He says the Boy Scouts either have to shut it down. And that age range, under 15, is right about when these kids, if they're hammering it and they're heading for Eagle, that's right about the point that you're getting them at the camps to do merit badges like that.
Right, because I don't know if everyone understands, but there's an expiration point with Boy Scouts.
Yes, there
You don't
is.
get just to stay in it for your whole life. It's 18, right?
It's 18.
It's 18, so you have to accomplish everything you're going to accomplish, and it's not easy to make Eagle.
It's
Everything,
not.
you only have a window of opportunity, and if you don't let these kids start until they're 15, I just don't see how they're going to be able to meet a lot of these requirements.
Right.
I don't either. It also affects the hunter education program. Now, I'm going to take a wild guess. I probably had 1,000 kids for hunter education, maybe more over the years. And I have had them come in as young as 9 years old because the families hunt out of
Right,
state where it's
right.
allowed, where they're supervised.
Yeah.
And we would issue them a letter, and they got their certificate of competency at 14, and they were eligible, having that in hand, to get an FID card for a long gun at age 15 to
Right.
hunt on their own.
Right.
So the prelude to allowing a young person to go out at 15 years old is all of those years before that,
Correct.
when there's a structured process in place, which, by the way, has been around since the 1950s when hunter education was introduced, where they're mentored. And when I would get the 14, 15-year-olds in a hunter ed course, and we would try to have the courses just in the fall, just before the program, the hunting season started,
Yep.
these kids have already been involved in shooting sports. they've been involved in something. They've been to the conservation camp, or they went
Right.
to a 4-H camp,
Right.
or they were at Boy Scouts, or they were involved with one of the club youth programs, and they probably had a couple of family members who took them to the range on a regular basis. So now they're in it. Now they're in it to win it. They want the certificate of competency. They want to go buy their first license. They want to go to the police department. And there's nothing. I work for a small department, as I think I told you. I worked part-time after I retired from the state. And one of my duties was to issue firearms permits. And there is nothing like looking at a 15-year-old kid walking in with a big smile on their face, his or her face,
Yep.
with their paperwork, with mom or dad in tow, saying,
Proud.
I get to hunt on my own this year.
Aw.
Because they had been doing it for 3, 4,
Yeah.
right?
It's
3
a
years.
And
family
sometimes
thing.
watching older siblings
Right.
go through the process.
Right.
And now they get to make that transition and be part of the group.
Right.
Right.
But this bill is going to make it so they can't partake in any shooting sport,
Absolutely.
not even training,
That's
correct?
correct. Well, it shuts down training specifically.
Right.
Yeah.
To any child under 15.
Yes, it does.
So my son, who got his rifle merit badge at 11, who started shooting the Red Ryder BB gun at 5, none of that would have been possible for him.
Correct. That's
This
absolutely
is
correct.
just a shame because I think it's so important to get kids involved in something, and this is brilliant. I mean, I
Well, it's their
can't think of-
responsibility too, because you know, growing up, everybody around me had guns.
Right.
Okay, we took them to school. We were just talking about 4420. The girl I hung out with she's a couple years younger than me, and she goes, I remember when my brother used to get on the bus with his shotgun and take it to school because he was going hunting afterwards.
Right.
And I went, yeah. And she looked at me and she goes, he was going to your house. He lived on one end of town and I lived on the other, but I was close to the school. So we leave school, we go to my house, and then we'd work our way back up the river. We'd get to the downtown, he'd unload, walk home, I'd turn around and go back home. And that was
John.
considered normal.
We know that you drove 2 hours to get here.
Oh, yes.
So we have a little present.
Oh my God.
And it's Harley paper because we believe in having things that are made in America.
It's so cute.
It's not a Harley, so don't get excited.
My Indian motorcycle was made in America. So
Oh,
you know I'm riding an Indian chief.
That's true. That's
open it here?
true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't have Indian paper. I just had that at home.
I love it. I'm not going to knock a Harley. I'm not going to be one of those snooty people.
Yeah, don't be snooty.
You know, 4420 really, if it goes through the way it's written, because of the restriction on
Yep.
permission on private property, it's going to put an end to hunting.
Yep.
And
It's going to affect so much.
Mass Wildlife is funded through a 14% tax on fire. I love it. Perfect timing.
Yep.
I'm going to
There you
stand
go.
it right there.
I love it.
So
I
tell
love
me
it.
about the tax. 'Cause
So the tax, there's a big reimbursement of money that comes back to Massachusetts. It actually comes back to every state. So anytime you buy a gun, you buy ammunition, you buy archery tackle, it's already taxed ahead of time. And that's done between the manufacturers and the IRS. So that money goes to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service every year. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service apportions that money back to the states based on the number of hunting licenses.
Right.
So we've got a couple dynamics going on in Massachusetts. Okay, first of all, wildlife restoration, habitat restoration comes out of that money, plus some other pools. Okay, hunter education comes out of that money. Land purchases from time to time, especially to protect critical properties, that is a piece of the money that's used for that. And by the ways, back in the 1980s, the early 1980s, the sportsmen and women of Massachusetts self-imposed a $5 tax on their licenses. If you purchase a license, it's called the land use fee or the land stamp.
Oh, wow.
And that money goes directly to the Inland Fish and Game Fund for land purchases. And as millions and millions of dollars have come in from that over the years, number of licenses dwindles, the amount of money decreases. You create a situation where people cannot go out and hunt other than perhaps on state property. But there's
well, they're also making it so you can't hunt on private property.
on private property,
Right.
and that's exactly where I was going.
Yeah.
The whole written permission thing,
Yep.
or a sign has to be posted.
Oh, gosh.
That is because this state is so fragmented, unless you know someone who owns a big tract of property or a farm, okay, it's almost physically impossible to be able to do that.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So because of that, you're mitigating the ability to hunt. The licenses are going to drop.
Yes.
The income to the state going to drop.
Yes.
There's a lot going on here.
It's going to affect even non-gun owners.
Again,
if
it's a
people
whole
don't understand.
synergy.
Yep.
And no one has thought of the second and third order effects of that. Now, I've seen places where they've banned the discharge of firearms, they've done some other things, and the side or the long-term result of that is
Right.
multiple car deer accidents and high rates of Lyme disease and animals killed all over the road.
Yeah, so
Because there's
whether
no
you're
hunting.
a gun owner or not, this bill is going to affect you.
The bill is going to
It's
affect
going
everyone.
to affect
It's
everyone.
going to affect everyone in an adverse way.
Right. People need to pay attention. And
This is not just about people that own scary black rifles.
Right.
So what do you think? What should people that are watching? What should you tell them that they can do to help?
What should I tell them that they
Prevent
should do to
this.
help become knowledgeable of the details of the bill? Don't try to read the whole thing, 140 pages.
Yeah.
You will have a migraine headache. There are some good synopses of the bill. One is done by the Massachusetts Chiefs Association,
Yep.
which is not in favor of this bill. A number of police departments have come out against it specifically for that reason. Talk to your state reps, talk to your senators, and tell them that this is unacceptable. That this has long-term consequences that go way beyond making corrections to the firearms laws, which is what this was sold as.
Right.
Right.
I have no problem with there being laws that affect the use of firearms, but we have some pretty good ones on the books right now, considering Massachusetts has the lowest homicide rate in the nation.
Right.
And
And-
accidental gun
And
deaths.
accidental gun deaths.
Zero.
And it looks like they had nobody write this bill that had any expertise in the field at all whatsoever.
Well,
which was
considering
so
that
discouraging.
Chief Glidden did the analysis for the Mass Chiefs, and he's like the guru that wrote the book
We've taken his class.
on
He's
that.
amazing.
So you know.
We have the big
Okay.
blue book.
Yeah, we
That's
do.
this
Glid-
thick. I
Glid-
usually on
Glidden
this
is
show.
good. And he's found so many holes in this thing.
Right.
I would say that there's a problem, and the unintended consequences of this, again, it's going to kill fish and wildlife.
Right.
It's going to affect the
It's going
habitat.
to affect our environment.
It's going to affect our
absolutely.
environment adversely. Folks need to talk to their elected representatives on, and I would actually bring it down probably as low as your mayor's office or your selectman's office.
How about gold.org? If you visit gold.org, they broke it down pretty
Yep.
nicely too.
Gold.org has done a really good
Yep.
job with it, and of course, I'm wearing my Gold Director's shirt.
I love it.
Okay, this is part of the repertoire now that I'm retired, and there's no conflict of interest with me being a state employee. I can serve as a director for Gun Owners Action League,
Yep.
and I'm more than happy to do that because, as I said earlier, when we talked about scouts and all the other stuff, this is a lifestyle thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, this isn't a job for me. Neither was the Council on Aging nor the Boy Scouts,
Right.
and
A passion. We all have to work.
it's a
together.
passion.
But we are out of time. I can't thank
I
you
figured as
enough.
much.
I know. It's
Grab your cup,
Grab
John,
your cup.
'cause
We're-
This is where we
we're-
say
a cup of freedom right
a
here.
cup of
Cup of
freedom.
freedom. God
Have
bless
a drink
America.
Of freedom.
Yep. Stay safe. Keep vigilant. Thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions or concerns, or you want to learn more about HD 4420, email us at sistersinarms2022@gmail.com. Until next time.